When I'm not doing that, I am here as a graduate student. And this past November, I was glued to the documentaries that were coming on about John F. Kennedy's assassination, because it had been 50 years. And as I was looking at one of the documentaries, and I wish I could have found the picture, but I don't have it, I saw them hauling in the Warren Report. And I thought, I was in technical writing at the time, and I thought, wow, if someone brought that to me to read, I would probably sooner just come up with a conspiracy theory. So, I went and talked to Dr. Corkill about this, and she thought it might be a good idea to analyze the Warren Report. So here is part of what I came up with. I pulled a great deal out so that I could stay within time. But here goes. Written in the wake of the assassination of the 35th President of the United States, the report of the President's Commission on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, hereafter known as the Warren Report, is a suspicion-inspiring document. Since its publication in 1964, the American public's perception of the document has inspired a number of conspiracy theories that refute the report's evidence-based conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the murder of the President. A comparative analysis between the Warren Report and a more successful government document, the 9/11 Commission Report, and a discussion of how discourse communities communicate knowledge, demonstrates that the Warren Report fails because its construction and a lack of humanism create an impassable border between the Warren Commission's consensus of knowledge and the American public. The edition of the Warren Report utilized for this analysis is a scan of an original publication of the 1964 release report. The Government Printing Office released a digitized version of this report in 2013 to commemorate the assassination. The digitized file comes in at exactly 920 pages, including images of both covers and any blank pages inserted into the report at the time of its publication. The original print version of the report totaled 889 pages. A black and white photograph of President John F. Kennedy appears immediately following the cover page. A second cover page and the Commission's letter of transmittal precede a 7-page forward. The forward divides into 5 subheadings. Each subheading explains an aspect of the Commission's efforts to construct the report. The final heading, the Commission's report, specifies the method of organization the Commission employed. According to the summary, and here I directly quote, and I'm going to put this up for you, because this is one of the many samples of quotes you find in the Warren Report, and as you can see, it's quite lengthy. According to the summary, the report consists of, and I'm going to read a little fast, of an initial chapter summarizing the Commission's basic findings and conclusions, followed by a detailed analysis of the facts and the issues raised by the events of November 22nd, 1963, and the 2 following days. Individual chapters consider the trip to Dallas, the shots fired from the Texas School Book Depository, the identity of the assassin, the killing of Lee Harvey Oswald, the possibility of conspiracy, Oswald's background and possible motive, and arrangements for the protection of the President. Okay. The report's 8-page table of contents follows the forward and lists all chapters and appendices of the report. According to the table of contents, the title of the first chapter is Summary and Conclusions. This chapter contains the Commission's conclusions and recommendations. Subsequent chapters and appendices provide the supporting evidence for the findings published in the first chapter. The cover page of the Warren Report lists the names of the primary contributors to the report. Appendix 4 provides biographical information about each of these key members, beginning with Chief Justice Earl Warren. The members of the Commission were primarily lawyers, accountants, and military historians. An examination of the credentials of these 31 men and 1 woman showed that the majority earned law degrees from prestigious universities such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. As these individuals had been effectively trained in the construction of legal briefs and historical reports, their selection to the Commission suggests that they were well qualified for this task. While some of the members of the Commission were published authors, the scope of these publications was specific to the members' professional fields. Leon D. Hubert Jr. and Melvin A. Eisenberg, for example, were editors of legal journals such as Harvard Law Review and Yale Law Journal. There is no indication that any of the primary contributors wrote anything beyond legal briefings or historical reports before the Warren Commission. However, being effective in the drafting of legal documents or historical reports does not suggest that these writers necessarily have the ability to address the American public in the wake of a national tragedy. The intent of the Warren Report was to explain why the authorities investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy identified Lee Harvey Oswald as the assassin. According to the report's board, the state of Texas arraigned Oswald within 12 hours of his arrest, charging him with the assassination of President Kennedy. However, Oswald did not confess to assassinating Kennedy and never did so, as Jack Ruby murdered him on November 24, 1963. The issue of audience as it relates to the Warren Report is complicated because the Warren Report identified two audiences for the document. A letter dated September 24, 1964 appears in the Warren Report immediately following the page of the report identifying the members of the commission. After greeting the president, the letter says, "Your commission to investigate the assassination of President Kennedy herewith submits its final report." This letter's composers identified the intended audience of the report as President Johnson. Along with the letter, further identification of Johnson as the audience of the report is in the government document known as Executive Order 11130. This document, signed by the President, establishes the commission on November 30th, 1963. According to the document, the commission is to evaluate all facts and circumstances surrounding such assassination, including the subsequent violent death of the man charged with the assassination, and report to me being President Johnson, its findings and conclusions. However, the report also identifies the public as the intended audience, with the statement found in Chapter 1 of the Warren Report that says that the document has been prepared with a deep awareness of the Commission's responsibility to present the American people an objective report of the facts relating to the assassination. The establishment of President Johnson and the American public as the intended audiences of the report contributes to the problematic nature of the document because it makes clear the fact that the Commission did not have a limited audience to address. In an article called "Using FAFEO Planning," John Keenan says that having a limited audience can be an advantage because it enables the writer to analyze the reader and shape the writing so that it effectively achieves the purpose with that particular reader or group of readers in mind. Essentially, the Commission was attempting to serve and satisfy two audiences and did not do an effective job in analyzing either with a legal brief stylization of the report. According to the History Channel's documentary, JFK Assassination, The Definitive Guide, only 31% of the American public rejected the Warren Commission's findings following its 1964 publication. However, as time passed, the American public became increasingly suspicious of the document. According to a Gallup poll conducted in 2013, a clear majority of Americans, 61%, believe others besides Lee Harvey Oswald were involved in the plot to assassinate Kennedy. This statistic is a clear indicator that the Warren Report is failing to convince at least one of its intended audiences, the American public, of the document's findings. Craig Warren's article, no relation, Neglected Testimony, complements the technical precision of the report, but goes on to say that the commissioners displayed no emotion as they documented this dark moment in the nation's history. The Warren Report is thorough, precise, and highly technical. It displays no emotion in its discussion of the president's death and the events that followed. An example of this lack of emotion exists in the clinical tone of the account of the president's final moments. And to help emphasize this, I'm going to have to back out of here for a minute because I want it to be on mute. I have a video of the footage, or of some of the footage that was taken outside of Parkland Hospital after, or as President Kennedy was being worked on inside. And it starts out with Dan Rather narrating. So there's Dan Rather. And as you watch this, I'm just going to read what the commission wrote. Just close this one. Yeah, okay. President Kennedy could have survived the neck injury, but the head wound was fatal. From a medical viewpoint, President Kennedy was alive when he arrived at Parkland Hospital. The doctors observed that he had a heartbeat and was making some respiratory efforts, but his condition was hopeless, and the extraordinary efforts of the doctors to save him could not help but to have been unavailing. This impersonal aspect of the Warren Report stands in stark contrast to the tearful stock footage of the American public weeping outside of Parkland Hospital at the news of the president's death, and demonstrates the ineffectiveness of the document. In his technical writing article, History, Rhetoric, and Humanism, Russell Rutter states that technical writing is 1/3 writing proficiency, 1/3 problem-solving skills, and 1/3 the ability to work with other people. Rutter further says that technical communication must be defined in broader, more humanistic terms. In applying these ideas to the Warren Report, it becomes clear that the lack of humanism in the document causes it to fail, because the report does not relate with its intended audience, an American public grieving the loss of its leader, and not reflecting the nation's grief. The Warren Commission created a divide between itself and its audience. The divide would eventually lead to the discrediting of the report and of the members of the Warren Commission as well, through numerous conspiracy theories. Because human beings are the recipients of communications such as the Warren Report, a consideration of the human element would have made the Warren Report more effective. In order to appreciate how a lack of humanism caused a rift between the Warren Report authors and the audience of the American public, an examination of another government document, the 9/11 Commission Report, shows how utilizing human elements in a government document can create acceptance among the audience of the American public. This document isn't without criticism, but the majority of the American public has not regarded the report with the same infamy they reserve for the Warren Report. It even had some time on the bestsellers list. Again, coming to Craig Warren's article, he says that the 9/11 Commission won over a far greater portion of the reading public than did the Warren Commission. In comparing the two reports, the differences become immediately apparent. The length of the 9/11 Commission report is 567 pages, which is about 320 pages less than the Warren Report. The table of contents is only 3 pages long and includes with it a list of tables and illustration. Instead of labeling each chapter with the title that merely specifies what will be in the chapter, the 9/11 Commission diversifies the types of titles it uses for each section. The first chapter, for example, is We Have Some Planes. Another chapter is called Heroism in Horror. In doing this, the 9/11 Commission created a more accessible document. Readers would know specifically what each chapter covered and would also be able to relate to ideas such as planes, heroism, and horror, which were all ideas that we saw on 9/11. Along with these more audience-oriented features, the Commission immediately establishes itself as sharing in the pain and tragedy at what occurred in America on September 11, 2001. As the report begins, the Commission immediately seeks to communicate with the American people. And this is a quote that comes from the preface. And it says, "We have come together with a unity of purpose because our nation demands it. September 11, 2001 was a day of unprecedented shock and suffering in the history of the United States. The nation was unprepared. How did this happen, and how can we avoid such tragedy again?" In using the word "we," the 9/11 Commission creates unity between the American public and itself. The Commission also acknowledges the shock and suffering that all experienced on September 11, 2001. The rhetorical question, how did this happen, reflects the overall shock of the entire nation in the days following the terrorist attack. By incorporating these characteristics into the 9/11 report, the Commission incorporated humanism into their document and eliminated any boundaries between the American public and themselves. Along with the Warren Commission placing a barrier between themselves and the American public through a lack of humanism, the discourse conventions of the Commission created a situation in which the American public was unable to fully understand the knowledge the Commission attempted to convey through the report. Charlotte Rawls and Nancy Browdy Blinder provide further support for this idea by discussing the 4 emergent concepts of technical communication's social perspective: community, knowledge, and consensus, and discourse conventions. According to Thralls and Blyler, discourse conventions are the discursive practices that allow the community to justify their beliefs and arrive at a consensus about what they will call knowledge. Examples of discourse conventions might include a technical vocabulary, certain types of writing, or even the types of sentences a discourse community might use to communicate what they believe to others. The Warren Report frequently utilized the discourse convention of a complex sentence structure throughout the document. And this isn't a terribly scientific analysis, but running this, running the first sentence, as you can see here, this is a 40-word sentence. I ran it through the Microsoft Word readability check, and it comes in at 12th grade. The primary reason for this is that the sentence, the rating is based on a complex sentence structure, the number of words. The authors also maintain third person throughout the text of the document. The 9/11 Commission also used discourse conventions in the creation of its document, but did so in a way that proved more effective in communicating its knowledge to the American public. Their first sentence is shorter and less complex. This is only 14 words long. It did come in at a 12th grade level as well. However, the second sentence was only a 6th grade reading level. So they were using a varying degree of complexity throughout the document, and that made it more accessible. So, despite the fact that the truth of the Warren Report is beginning to become more scientifically acceptable, the majority of the American public still refuses to accept the Warren Report and its lone gunman theory. In contrast, the report stemming from an investigation of the 9/11 tragedies was accepted without question. The reason for this may not be that any actual conspiracies exist, although I won't say that for sure, because there were people even yesterday saying, oh, there's a conspiracy, you're wrong. Instead, the failures of the Warren Report stem from a lack of humanism and the Warren Commission's inability to convey knowledge to an audience on the outside of the boundaries of its discourse community.